Okay, so it's 1 a.m. here in London. It's 7 p.m. in Houston.
That's correct.
I've had a couple of pints of Guinness.
Nice.
Everything seems to be working here, although my chair is a bit squeaky. So I've discovered if I lean to the left, it doesn't squeak so much.
Right.
But then it looks like I'm having a stroke or something. So I'm just going to have to. There we go. It's better.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm Zach Weber, Sci-Fi Comic Nexus, and I'm here to talk to Pizo Meyer. Am I saying it right?
That's correct.
Pizo.
That's correct. Yes.
That's
correct.
Now, I thought I was going to be speaking to someone Italian or Brazilian or something exotic like that, but no, he's just a regular guy.
I should have started with a funny accent, but you know.
Okay, so Pizo is the artist on a comic called Dominé. Am I saying Dominé? Is that right?
Yes, that is Latin for Lord. That's where we came up with that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's in collaboration with a writer called James Roberts.
Yes, sir.
Lovely. Okay. So first of all, tell us about yourself, Pizo, while I have my coffee, because it's 1 a.m. here in London, folks.
Right.
Carry on.
Yeah. So I did come from an art background. I did get a scholarship in art, and I started off drawing really, really crappy cartoons for my school paper. They were pretty terrible. I could draw, but I wasn't really good at cartoons yet. But I was learning. So after that, I was in the service. I was on a carrier, and I actually drew a daily comic for the flight plan. I made fun of the air boss and the mini boss, and I put them in a little strip, and kind of continued my love for drawing while I was out in the service. And I was stationed in San Diego. So when I was shore, I met Roman Derge, who was on. He was a friend of mine, and he wasn't doing this at the time. He was just drawing. He wasn't. Later on, I found out he had this zine called Xenophobe, and Xenophobe focused Lenore, which he is now known for. If you ever see the Lenore comic, that's his. I think he was with Slave Labor. I can't remember who he went to, but Lenore debuted in Xenophobe, and I was just drawing this funny strip called Sickness and Health. It wasn't about anything in particular. Had a couple recurring characters, but it was just funny, just off the wall, silly, just kind of gross humor, just stupid. It wasn't very, I was new at it. So after that, I took quite a break from comics, and then got back into it again. Probably, I want to say 2010 was the time I started pursuing it again. That was the first, and that's when the first thing I started doing was Seed, but that's a whole other story. But that's the intro, so we can talk about the later stuff in a bit. But that's where I got to. That's how I got to that point anyway. And I did come from a graphic design background. Oddly, when I got out of the service, I did do graphics for 5 years. So lucky for me, when I came into the digital realm of all this stuff, I already knew the program. So I felt pretty happy about that. And so that's where my digital background comes from. Yeah. I don't know what it's like to come into this not knowing those programs. I'm sure it's very overwhelming, because what you do with GIMP is amazing, because I didn't even know that you did that with GIMP. And I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I was just drawing it on paper, and how do I get this onto the computer? I looked around, I couldn't find much help, but I eventually got the hang of using GIMP to do it, and it does everything.
That's really incredible.
Yeah, it does everything I want it to do practically.
That's pretty cool. That's really, I have a Photoshop license, so I'm not that creative, so. But anyway, that's amazing.
Okay, so your comic Dominé is written by James Roberts, but the concept's yours. So you came up with the idea, he wrote it, and you draw it. So how did the concept come together in your mind?
So I drew a small, it was just a small little drawing. It was 8.5 by 11, and I had come up with this dialogue. It's actually based off a lyric from Massive Attack. And it's something, "You're my precious king, if you could only hear." And I thought this idea, these two characters, they weren't even normal looking people. They were like, one looked like a garlic clove and one looked like a potato. And they were just totally alien. And one was sitting by this little this tree with this pod, bringing it gifts, and he thought it was going to be the next king, and the other one thought this was nonsense. He's like, whatever you're bringing doesn't have effect on this thing, blah blah blah. It's nothing there. It's not, So that whole idea spawned the original concept. So when I was with Pulp 21 is where I met James. We had an anthology, and I actually came up with a small little plot with those 5 pages, and based off of that idea, it was a little bit more developed, and they were, they stood upright, and one of the characters did make it into the strip today. But so basically that's where that came from. That never saw the light of day, the 5-page for the anthology, because anthology never, the second, well, I think it was the 3rd or 4th one, they decided we're going to go do our own books. And that's when I took off with James, start working with James when we were there. So that never made it, but I still wanted to do that story. So when I was working with James at Pulp 21, I decided to pitch it to him. I said, hey, this is this idea I had. It's called Dominé. It's about, these guys believing there's going to be this new king. And so he took that and, ran with it and came up with a completely big universe that I would have never. I'm not a writer. I just draw, so.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So Dominé is set on an alien planet, and I think all of the characters are aliens. There's no humans at all. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't even know that we've really showcased anybody human at this point. I think we probably will here and there. It's not a big focus at this point. But yeah, the
green or purple.
That's correct. Yeah, the blood is always like yellow, green, or purple, or and so the obviously the bad guys are reptilian, and the ungovernables are a mix of aliens, but they're I hope that people are going to side with the ungovernable. They're like they're the underdogs, and everybody's pushing.
I think it's fairly unusual you have any kind of science fiction where there are no humans.
Right.
you want your audience to connect emotionally with one of the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do you think people will have difficulty making that connection with your green dudes?
I think so far the book that the people that read it, they have liked it. The 2 standout characters are Justin and Cole. They're on the ungovernable side, and the other 2 bad guys, obviously, it's King Reyland and Brano. They're the bad guys, and they're the standout. But I think people are pushing for the underdogs. I would have never thought that James would have wrote me 2 books of complete action. And that's the way we work, is that he writes a script and it all pretty much is action. And he says there's going to be dialogue here, but he doesn't get into specifics just yet. I just need to know if somebody's talking, if how many panels are we going to get to the next thing. Yeah. And so if I would have wrote it, again, I don't really write, but I probably would have had a much slower pace. But this thing jumps right out the gate and goes into 2 books of complete action. And so it's hard to say that anybody's learning to get to know the characters, because they really haven't been fleshed out that much yet, but they will. They will in the 3rd book. A lot is going to change. It's not going to be another book of action as far as what we talked about and what we discussed.
There's a big battle which takes up quite a lot of the 1st issue.
And the 2nd issue.
Okay.
As I'm working on it, it takes the 2nd issue too, so it's ongoing. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Following on from the issue of the alien characters, you did a short comic called Seed, and it features only aliens, an exotic language which is not translated at all.
Yeah.
Now, on the one hand, comics is a visual medium.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is for the readers to be able to follow the exact meaning of what you're trying to say? Do the images say more than the words?
Yeah. So I pull my. I was a big Jim Woodring fan, and Jim Woodring is a wordless comic, and I was always fascinated with that. I also love Fantastic Planet, the animated film, the French one. Very amazing. Alien world, it's totally different. You're not sure exactly what you're watching, but you're watching something. So I kind of went to the mind with Seed like that, and my art style. People kind of just my colleagues and my team kind of describe me as like Dr. Seuss meets Robert Crumb meets this kind of organic, like Giger kind of type style. And I said, well, this is perfect for the Seed world that I came up with. That was the first one that I wrote was mine. It was all hand done. It was inked and penciled by me, colored by Tina Higgins, and she did an amazing job. Pulp 21 decided to repackage that. I went with this first publisher. Nothing really happened with it. Nothing worthwhile. And then Pulp 21 said, let's repackage it. He goes, but I want to add dialogue. I said, I don't really want him speaking English. He said, no, we'll add subtitles. I'm going to kind of explain what's going on because I know the story, and I'll kind of explain what's happening, and then we'll have the alien language. And I said, that's fine. I was okay with that. I just wanted the book to get a proper release. And so I think it actually was one of our better selling books at the con out of our releases that we did, and we would continue to go to press with it. So it was successful in my eyes, even though it did explain what was going on, but you really didn't get to know these characters. And when I did the second Seed, there's no translation. It's very what's the word? It's kind of symbolic. The concept, I don't know if you saw that one, but the concept was God makes man destroys Mother Earth, God comes back to destroy man, and Mother Earth was the bird, God was the guy cranking out those worm looking things that destroyed the bird. So yeah, it was very symbolic. It had you didn't have to know anything about the first book, and the alien guy, the pink guy, was the prophet. We call the prophet. We don't know why we call him the prophet, but we do. But he was like the environmentalist trying to save the planet. So it's very symbolic that you don't have to know. And that's the kind of stuff. If I did comics on my own, probably if I could keep writing Seed and do it on my own, I would continue to do that because I like it, because it's so strange and it's so different. It's so out there. It's nothing that you're going to see that's out there right now. It's just one of those weird kind of books, and I love that.
It certainly stands out, yes. Stands out from the others.
So
right.
that's where Seed. That's where this. Yeah, that people are just like and I admit when I released it with Ghostfish the first time and there was no narrative, a lot of people didn't get it. They didn't understand. And Chet's like, I get it, but I'm a comic guy. So He goes, I think we need to write some dialogue. I said, that's totally fine. I just don't want them speaking English. If you want to write, make an alien language. And so and then it did work because people did understand what was going on. So I'm like, props to him on that. So, but the second one, I just said, well, I'm not going to translate. I'm just going to go ahead and tell the story. So
the plus side of that is that anybody in the world can pick it up and open it up, and they all share the same experience.
Yeah, that's my thing. I'm the one to write something that you don't have to know what happened in the first book. It's just a situation, It's almost like my big influence was Heavy Metal Magazine, where you could, follow these short stories, and you really didn't need. I mean, you kind of knew what was going on in the other stories, but sometimes they were just their own thing. It just depends on what artist you got, what writer you got, but. And I love that. Like I like having just new ideas. But Seed has been very difficult to write for me because it took me probably 5 years to come up with a second idea. And that took me a while to get that one out. I did it in a different way also. If you look at it, it's done in Illustrator. That's total vector. There was no traditional anything on that book. It was, maybe the pencils at one point before I scanned them in or whatever, but that's it. So totally different. And I love Illustrator. I mean, I'd like to do some more like that. I did start a second Sci-Fi thing. I can post some pics at some point in Illustrator. It was called The Signal. I wrote it. It's kind of quiet, but I like it. But I need to pick it back up when I get some time. But I really want to get Dominé completed, and so James can start doing the letter. He does letters and scripts and all that stuff. So that's where I'm at with that. So.
That's great. Going back to Dominé, when I was reading it, it struck me that it's got lots of elements that are like mythical, historical, fantasy kind of setting. You've got the evil tyrant king, the brave knights on horseback, honor and duty, sword fights.
Yes.
Where does that kind of influence come from for you?
That comes, I couldn't, I wish I had him on the call, but that comes from James. I mean, he, like I said, he took the very small thing that I came up with and completely came up with this whole big universe. Like, really, a lot of the stuff that I had for the original concept so far hasn't really surfaced, and I don't know that it will. But I don't want to strong arm anybody's writing because just because I came up with the original concept, I'm like, James, you do what you want with it. I'm going to draw it anyway. I may have had an idea what I wanted to do, but I don't know. I'm just like, you just do your thing. And that's fine. But that's from him. He wanted limited technology. He wanted some, but he wanted it about swords and horseback and, or creatures that are horseback, horses, type. But they're not exactly horses. But he wanted it very old school kind of. He goes, a few guns here and there is fine. Maybe some hovercraft or, and obviously King Reyland has a big ship he lives on because he don't want anybody to kill him, so he stays, up so he can keep. But yeah, so that all comes from James. That was not my input at all.
It's a kind of sci-fi fantasy Wild West.
Yeah. It's not super. It's not super. It is a little bit of. I like that. I think it's great that I probably would have wrote it just sci-fi, but I think he's got he's a very big comic book guy and reads a lot of comics. He got a writing degree, and he's really hardcore. I myself came up in the independent side of comics. I was obviously influenced as a kid by heavy metal when I was young. But I read like Fantagraphic stuff. I really couldn't tell you the first thing about a lot of superhero books. I just don't know. I honestly don't know. I didn't buy them. It wasn't my focus. It's not what I cared about. I would buy something science fiction or something funny, at the time. So it was different for me and James. But James reads a lot of superhero stuff. He reads everything. So, and it's his writing skill that's brought, Dominé to life, because I wouldn't have come up with any of that. There's no way. I'd be still stuck with that first one page that I wrote, and I'm going like, where do I go from here? Yeah.
Okay. Looking at your artwork, Pizo, I'm thinking there's a lot of areas of heavily saturated color, lots of strong, vibrant colors in it. Kind of reminds me of the expressionist painters, the Fauvist painters. It's not a lot of subtlety in it. It's all very
right
in your face. Is that a conscious decision by yourself to use those strong colors to create a type of emotional tone in your pictures?
Yeah, I think it is. Being that I do love heavy metal, there's always I started learning about the kind of quiet monotone palettes and just very minimal, all gray or all blue or just variants of that. But yeah, I do like, I don't know why, but I do like loud and bright, and I think it just comes off when you see something. It really just hits you. It impacts you. And I do come from an art background and did some painting. I do watercolors. I love abstract painting. I did it for about 3 years. I just haven't had time to do it. But even then, I think my stuff was not subtle. I had loud paint color, not super loud, but pretty loud. My watercolors are pretty vibrant. So I think that's where that comes from. I thought about, maybe I should switch to a quiet palette scale, but I just don't want to. I think it's more fun to be in your face and loud and just kind of out there. I love the bright and the neon colors when things pop, and they really pop, I also, with that being said, I'm trying not to make it look too digital, if that makes sense. I don't know if you can tell from Dominé, but I try to make it look a little bit old school and retro, but
it's got a very organic kind of feel to it, yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, that makes me happy. I always go from book to book, and I'm like, well, how's this look compared to the last one? Does it look the same? Does it look different? I don't know. But yeah, so that's definitely intentional. I do like really loud color comics. I really like the vibrant, super, the more psychedelic, the better for me. I think that's really cool. I like color comics that don't even really belong in any sort of real color scale. Something that could be pink and yellow the whole comic, and it's just like, it's just bright, and you're just like, wow, okay, I can do this. Yeah. So anyway.
Great. Without giving too much away, how much do you want to reveal about where the story's going next?
So it is going to quiet down a little bit. There is another psychic. So there's two psychics. One is King Reyland's daughter. She's a psychic, and without her, that's going to be his demise. The ungovernables want to catch her, and take her from him, and they feel like he's not going to have any power if she can't see what's going on. And there's another character, a shaman, who is another psychic. And I won't tell you what's happening in book 3, at the end of book 2 with him, but he's a very big part of it. And so and I think in the it's either going to be 3 or 4 books. We're not sure. We are going for a graphic novel, which is we decide not to release them book after book. We want to do it as a whole, and that's fine. But I think that you'll learn a lot more about the characters because things are going to be at a different level. It's not going to be this hardcore battle for the whole story. So that's good. But yeah, those two guys, the shaman and the daughter, are a very big important piece from James' scripts that I've seen. So
right. So you see, I think it's important. You've got to think about the balance of the drama and the action. Especially you want to get people's attention on one hand, but on the other hand, you don't just want to give them loads of battles and explosions. You also want to get the elements of the story in there as well.
Yeah, and I really didn't want to draw 2 books of battle right out the gate. I was like, James, what are you doing to me, man? Like, I got to get my little figure poser and do punching and all these action shots. I was like, wow. But it's fun. It's been fun. The first book was a lot of fun, and I'm laying the groundwork for the second book, and obviously getting some flats and colors done. Still got to do some more pencils. Still got to do some more inks, but it's moving along. It's moving along.
You've posted some of the
a couple new ones.
So
some sneak peeks. What's going on? Yeah, I try to promote it the best I can, but right now we're just selling the PDF. So that's fine. That works until we get a graphic novel. So
great. Okay. Thank you very much, Peter. This has been a fascinating little chat.
Thank you for having me. I hope you continue on your channel and start doing some more interviews. That'll be great. Okay. I look forward. I'll be listening to them.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And everyone else watching the comic Dominé, you can download the PDF from the PJ Press website. The link is down there. 29 pages of very bright color. $3. And that's all we have time for. Thank you, Pizo. And I'll talk to you later.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good